Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to the channel. I am doing my patch 2.6a tier list today. I want to talk about a few things. First of all, Roguefool, who is a great Riot dev on the Wild Rift team, talks a lot on the Reddit and has got really good player-facing communication. He said that he likes tier lists, but he thinks they're not like always accurate, or he doesn't think that they should be the definitive guide to what to play in the meta. And I 100% agree with his points on tier lists. For context, if you're new to tier lists or you just want a bit of explanation about this, tier lists are a guide. They are a general kind of opinion on what the strong champions are right now. You do not need to play the champions that are listed in like S or S plus tier to climb and carry yourself in ranked. You can play whatever you want. There are Teemo Challenger 1 tricks, despite me putting Teemo in D tier in every single tier list. Those Teemo Challenger 1 tricks would put Teemo in S tier because they're so good at Teemo, right? But if you're a bit of a jack of all trades, or you don't know what kind of champions you want to play in a role, tier lists will give you a bit of an indication about what is good in the meta right now. So if you need a bit of help deciding on a champion to play, tier lists can be quite useful for that. Something else that Roguefool mentioned was having context to tier lists. Now, I used to do this really cool tier list where I'd put like the keystones in, and I'd talk a lot more in depth about why I put the champions where. But those videos went on for like 50 minutes and no one watched them for the entire time, or very few people did. So it just wasn't worth the effort and the time that I put into creating that graphic. So what I'm going to do at the start of this tier list is I'm going to give you a rune tier list, a keystone tier list. And it might help give some context as to why certain champions are where. First of all, Conqueror. It is the best rune in the game because it is so ubiquitous. Like this rune is good on pretty much any champion, especially any carry champion. If you're ever in doubt about what rune to take, Conqueror is always a good rune. It is just too strong. It's too universal. But I think the main problem is there aren't many other good options for champions that would otherwise use different runes in the PC version, like Lethal Tempo and Press the Attack, etc. Right? So Conqueror is just the catch-all rune because there aren't that many other good options, especially for damage carries. In A tier, these are runes that are relatively well used across the board. Grasp is a great melee Baron laner rune, and again, even though it got nerfed, it is competing mostly with Fleet Footwork and Conqueror. Conqueror is always the safer option, but in certain matchups, Grasp is going to give you a bit more burst damage, so if you're not looking to take extended trades, Grasp is good. Fleet Footwork has crept in as a really strong rune for specific Baron lane matchups where you want the sustain. Mundos might take this. You'll sometimes see Camille's take it. Darius sometimes takes Fleet Footwork. There are a lot of reasons to take Fleet Footwork, especially for the sustain or melee champions, and so you'll probably see Fleet Footwork quite a bit. Summon Aerie has definitely taken over Font of Life as like the go-to rune for most supports now, as well as any kind of poke mid laners. Poke mid laners in general, or mid laners or AP champions in general, compete between these three runes maybe. Very niche champions might take Phase Rush. In fact, Phase Rush is a little bit too high. Phase Rush is, yeah, I'll talk about Phase Rush in a minute. So Summon Aerie has kind of come back as that ubiquitous, like, Enchanter support rune. Really good. And with Font of Life nerf, a lot of, supports that otherwise went Font of Life have now probably gone back to Summon Aerie. Aftershock is the Engage tank rune. Gallios, Alistairs, Leonas. Again, there aren't many other good options for them, so they have to take Aftershock. Electrocute, it's okay. Like, it's the Z rune. It's like any kind of burst assassin rune. You're mostly competing between Conqueror and Electrocute when you're looking at these types of runes. Not many people like Electrocute. They don't feel like you get as much value out of it as you do with Conqueror. But Electrocute gives you the good one-on-one damage. Conqueror is really good in teamfights in general, but obviously Electrocute's much better for like the one-on-one damage. Font of Life got nerfed, and it is now again a little niche. Really, the only people that use, I think maybe the only two users of Font of Life in the entire game are Braum and Nami. And Nami probably most of the time. I personally go Summon Aerie on Nami now. The only other Font of Life user is usually Braum. I don't see many other champions in the game that get a huge amount of value out of Font of Life. It doesn't. If it gave you tanky stats like maybe Aftershock or something like that, like you might see like Rakans or Leonas go it, but Aftershock's just better for those guys. And then Phase Rush is just so unbelievably niche right now. I think the problem with Phase Rush is In League PC, the support runes that you can add with Phase Rush help supplement the lack of offensive capability, right? In Wild Rift, you get 3 extra little rune choices that really don't give you enough to supplement wanting Phase Rush. The movement speed and slow resistance alone is not enough to make Phase Rush good because you lose out on so much offensive capability or so much laning presence by sacrificing for one of the other runes in the game. So that's the rune tier list. I hope that was helpful for you, and we'll move on to the Baron lane. All right, Baron lane. Now, I've seen my boy Hell's Devils tier list, and he's put Kayle in her own special tier in Baron lane. I think I was wrong about Kayle on release. I'll happily admit that. You know, I thought people would be more able to take advantage of her early game because I had seen some really good Baron laners play against me playing Kayle and they destroyed me. And that was my own personal opinion tainted of Kayle's early game. Well, obviously her early game got weaker and she's still basically permanently banned. I don't know if they hit Kayle in the right way. I don't think making her early game weaker because she already had like the weakest early game in the game. She was already one of the worst early game champions in the game. So now you've just made that even more so that she wants to sit under her tower and avoid farming until level 5. And I think like the way to hit her was the scaling on her level up, you know, waves or the scaling on her damage that in the late game. I think the early game is not where you wanted to hit Kayle. I do, however, think Kayle is much more exploitable in Baron lane than mid lane. I actually think Kayle is a better mid laner than she is a Baron laner. It's much easier to tower dive in Baron lane, and in general, you have a lot more trading potential and gap closing potential in early Baron lane. Like, Kayle cannot fight Riven, she cannot fight Garen, she cannot fight Renekton, she cannot fight Fiora, she cannot fight Jace. AP Malphite puts pressure on her. She can't fight Darius. Like, they're all champions that you can really, really destroy Kayle with early. I would say the biggest counter to Kayle early is Jace, because he can both harass her ranged and melee, and Jace's hammer form is obnoxious right now. But, you know, Renekton destroys her, Fiora destroys her. Kayle has a really, really crap early game, right? But if you can get to level 5, which doesn't take very long, you can start to play a much safer, and you can protect yourself against tower dives. You get to level 10 and suddenly you start to turn on and become the Kayle that we all know and love. And by level 15, you can solo carry games. She's still really strong. I would say she gets banned more often than she's played in high elo. And I don't think there maybe hasn't been enough testing on her on this new patch to really say whether she's still strong or not. But her ultimate is just really good, right? Her ultimate is just incredibly useful in almost any situation. And the fact that she pumps out ridiculous amounts of damage at the same time is also really good. So, right, the rest of it. Fiora, I don't think the riposte nerf means diddly squat. That's not the problem with Fiora, and I'll say it again. The problem is how far she can lunge. Her first ability has an obnoxious range on it, and with Grasp of the Undying, she can trade from range in melee matchups. It's very difficult to outtrade a Fiora. Even with the riposte cooldown nerf, it is very difficult to outtrade a Fiora. I still believe she's one of the best Baron laners in the game for that particular reason. Jace, his hammer form is absolutely disgusting. Jace's hammer form needs a nerf. It's really good. Jace has the strongest level 1 in the entire game. Mercury Cannon basic attack into Shock Blast, into hammer form, into To the Skies, into bonk them on the head, and they have no HP left. He has the strongest level 1 in the game. He can zone every single other Baron laner, maybe bar Fiora, in the game at level 1. Renekton's still super strong. Garen, I saw Hells has been playing this like full AD Garen build. I think it's cool, especially if you get ahead. I think it obviously is very weak if you fall behind. But Garen in general is a good pick. I think he's strong. He's like my go-to blind pick. He has very few terrible matchups in the Baron lane, apart from Fiora and Camille. He can kind of handle Jason Renekton. Riven's great. The reason I put Malphite so high in my tier list, despite him not being a particularly strong laner, is that he is, in my opinion, a really good pick for ranked team comps. When I do my Baron lane tier listing, I'm not doing it based on not always doing it based on the individual strength of a champion. I'm doing it based on what it provides for a team comp. And I think Malphite provides some of the best tools for a team comp in the entire game. He's got incredible engage, great CC, and he's bloody tanky. And I'll tell you, I'm almost certain of it, you win more games when you have a tank in your team. So Malphite is one of those tanks that has got a really, really great kit, and he's very easy to survive the laning phase with. Even if you go one AP item into full tank, like I just believe Malphite is just a solid, and I'm trying not to make a pun here, a solid pick. You know, if you pick Malphite, it very rarely is going to go wrong, and you're going to have a great like addition to the team. Camille, I think the nerf hit to her passive hit her really hard. I like Wukong. He's a little weaker in Baron lane he is in jungle. You have to play the lane a lot safer than Malphite, but he provides a lot to the team. Jax's split push pressure is really obnoxious. He's really good, but I think he is quite easy to deal with in the Baron lane. I think like in terms of 1v1, and as long as as long as you respect how quickly Jax can take towers, you can deal with him in the side lanes. Nothing else major, I think, in terms of the Baron lane tier list. You'll see things like Lucian down here, and you'll see things like Singed, Akshan, the Vayne. Like, these are champions that can play in the Baron lane, but again, Baron lane is such a critical role for, like, rounding out a team comp. Baron lane has one of the few roles in the game where you can actually play a tank other than support and maybe jungle. There aren't that many good tanky junglers, but, you know, Baron lane is where you can very efficiently play a tank that gets the gold income to be good. Or you play a split pusher. So it's like, it's one of those things where you've got a really, really like crucial role in the game in Baron lane. And I think like that's why my tier list looks like it does, because I'm balancing your role in a team versus like how much you provide as an individual champion. Jungle. Lee Sin got a buff. He was already S+. He's going to stay S+. However, I don't think he's got so much of a buff that he's completely eclipsing Kha'Zix. I believe Lee Sin and Kha'Zix are still the two best junglers in the game. Jace jungle is obnoxious. It's really good. Jace jungle is genuinely really good. He's got, again, like I said, you just walk into lane, you shock blast, you hammer form them, and you do a crap ton of damage. Especially level 3, you spike really hard at level 3. Like, I think Jace is Jace is just, his hammer form is too strong right now. It just is, and that means that he's good in pretty much any role that you can play him. However, he's very, and why Jace I don't think gets banned a lot is because he's actually quite hard to play effectively. So why am I playing with my hair all the time? Sorry guys, I usually have my hair tied up, and now that it's down, I'm just playing with it all the time. I look so stupid. Anyway, I like Nunu still. I think Nunu is like one of those junglers that is a good tanky jungler, and also has really, really, really good gank presence. Even though he did get a nerf again recently, I still believe him really strong. And the reason I kind of rate him a little higher than Rammus is that he's one of the few good like AP jungle sources. Like, we don't have many good like AP junglers in the game. Like, apart from the reason Evelynn is where she is and Morgana now is that these guys are AP junglers, right? I've moved Vi up here mostly because in high elo I'm seeing a lot of Vi getting played, and I think because her lockdown has always been a little undervalued, people have started to say, wait a second, like Vi's single target lockdown is really good. And people have started to pick up Vi and play Vi more often. She is really strong. I think she's very sleeper. I think that she maybe is one of the most underrated junglers in the meta right now. Fiora jungle, pretty solid. Again, like I said with Evelynn and Morgana, they are here because I don't particularly think Evelynn is a super strong champion in her own right. But she's like one of the best AP, like full AP junglers that you can play. There aren't many other good full AP junglers that you can actually play in the game. And so therefore Evelynn fills that niche of like, if you need an AP source in the jungle, she's usually going to be the best jungler for the job. Morgana, pretty strong, but like the thing about Morgana is that her clear speed's amazing, right? If you can proc her passive, you can clear camps so quickly. However, if you walk into lane and you miss a binding, that's your gank over. Like, you have nothing left. Like, you have to hit your binding, and that's why it's a little risky. I've moved Rammus up, and I've done this purely for Rogueful. Rammus is actually pretty good. I think he's very exploitable in the early game. I think if you're a good jungler, you can really, really dominate a Rammus. However, very speedy boy, very good ganks, very simple ganks, and also power spikes level 5. So his ganks even get better at level 5. And with actually having we've got quite an AD heavy meta right now. You'll find that I think most team comps have like one AP source maximum. We're a very AD heavy meta right now. Rammus gets a lot of value in AD heavy metas. I've seen some Kayle jungle. I don't think it's very good, but I think I've seen some Kayle jungle. I think it's solid because it's Kayle, and Kayle just, her ultimate is really good, and so therefore she's going to remain solid, and you give Kayle enough time, doesn't matter what position she's playing in, she's going to carry. But, you know, I think she's good for that reason. Amumu, I haven't seen enough Amumu to say boom. Like, you know, like I know they buffed him and I know that he's in a good spot, but I haven't seen enough Amumu to say I'm confident putting him higher than this. The couple of Amumus that I've seen got absolutely smashed, like Amumus always do in the jungle. But I feel like that's probably just user bias on my side, and it's just based on the games that I've seen him be played in. Shyvana sucks, don't play her. There we go. Just had to add that. Right, mid lane. I actually think KL is significantly better in mid lane, and hear me out. Here's my reasoning: shorter lane, so you can basically shorter lane, much harder to freeze waves in mid lane, much harder to dive mid lane tower. Yes, okay, there are some ranged matchups which will abuse you very early on, but all the melee matchups in the top lane abused you anyway, so who gives a crap if it's a ranged champion or a melee matchup that's slapping you? You're just sitting under tower until you're level 5 anyway. So I think that KL is better in mid lane. The only problem with playing KL mid lane is you do lose access to some of the more sort of mage-orientated mid-game spiking champs like, you know, Galio, Ziggs, and Orianna. So like a positional thing, you know, I think obviously it depends. You do lose, I think you lose a big mid-game, like mid-lane power source if you put Kayle there, but I do think that if you're looking to play a Kayle comp, or you're looking to play Kayle in general, you'll find that she's much safer to play in mid-lane. But I'm adding a caveat to this. If you play her in mid lane, you are losing access to champs that would otherwise snowball like mid-game team fights really hard, like Orianna, Ziggs, Galio. Jace, super strong mid lane as well. Really rate Jace in mid lane. In terms of other picks, like Orianna, still absolutely like safe as you like. Great mid game, good scaling. Ziggs, Galio, Zed. These are all the champions that I believe are like super strong right now. Zed, even with the nerf, he just has a new item which he loves. Like Edge of Night is a great item for Zed, and I still think he's super strong. Yasuo, Diana, Irelia, Akshan, Corki, Katarina. I really want to move Katarina down, but the problem is that Katarina is still in that spot where she can still go 0-3, and if she just joins a team fight at the right time, or the enemy team comp is not set up to stop her ultimate, she can still carry games. Katarina needs one good team fight, and she just takes over games, right? I don't think the TF buff was good enough. I think the nerf to TF's ulti range really, really hurt TF in general, and I don't think that the TF buff is enough to make him super strong. I think he's okay. I think TF is like a solid mid lane pick, but I just think cutting his ulti range has significantly hampered his ability to have big map-wide impact, or at least it's more telegraphed when he's going to have map impact now. Just my personal opinion. Veigar's early game is too bad for me to want to put him any higher than A+. I just think he's so easy to abuse. It takes him way too long to become scary. And if I'm playing scaling, I'm probably just hopefully pick Kayle. Brand, I think people have figured out not to stand close to each other now, and so Brand's power level has come down significantly. I think people have realized what Brand's abilities look like, and that you don't just sit next to Brand when he's ulted everybody in your team. I rate Annie higher than most other tier lists, I think, and that's mostly because still, and always will be, the Hextech belt enchant. Hello? Sorry, guys, I don't remember where I got to. Oh, yeah, it was this way, right? I rate Annie higher than most of the mid lanes because Hextech, like the Proto Belt enchant plus Tibbers, is always going to be a great engage that you have access to so often. In League PC, Annie's a bit of a meme because it was always like you need Flash for Annie to be useful because, you know, like it's like Flash Tibbers is the only way you get engages, and that happens so irregularly. Like, because Flash is on a much longer cooldown in League PC. But in Wild Rift, you have a short Proto Belt enchant cooldown, and you have a shorter Flash cooldown. So Annie's ability to engage is much more readily available in Wild Rift. That's why I rate her a bit highly. Morgana mid. Okay, here's my reasoning why Morgana mid isn't that good. Morgana is good at one thing in mid, and that's pushing waves, right? So she can push waves and she can shove into tower really quickly. She does it better than almost any other mid laner, and easier than any other mid laner on this list. It's what you do with that. If you roam and then you can find picks with your, you know, as if you're acting as like a second jungler, just looking for a quick binding, then maybe, you know. Can you hear? I don't know if you can hear my son in the background. Wait. But I think Morgana herself isn't a particularly strong AP carry. I much prefer her in either the jungle or support role, where you are playing a more of a utility focused role. Again, in mid, I think, you know, playing pure utility in mid, you're taking away from a role that is otherwise used for very high damage output, or otherwise used for, like, you know, strong mid game, you know, team fight control. And I think Morgana probably has that, but again, she's got quite an easy ultimate to, you know, avoid. And she relies on having Zhonya's early on, which delays like a AP power spike, for instance. Like, you have to go for Zhonya's, because if you don't go for Zhonya's, people just kill you when you're trying to ultimate. So, you know, going for Zhonya's means you have to go for Boots Rush, and it delays like a first powerful item spike. And so just don't rate Morgana for that particular reason. Teemo sucks. Yeah, there we go. Next one. AD carries. Again? Okay, right. I saw my boy Hells put Misfortune in S+ tier, and I know why he's done that, because he's had some really, really, really good MF builder games, and I think MF plus Siralda's Grudge is a very nice one-item spike for a carry like MF. However, I will say, I'm pretty sure Hells had an absolutely banger support to play with, and I think that is like one of the things that you need to take into context, is that I think MF very good in a duo with a very strong support. I think Hells did say that, but I think you need to have an aggressive support with you who is very good, and I think MF can definitely be very dominant. You know, I do think as an individual pick by herself, she's okay. I think if you picked MF in solo queue, you rely on hitting your double ups most of the time to get the damage done in lane. And I think if you really want to abuse her in the laning phase, you do have to have a good support with you. And I think she's much better in a duo role if you're playing a duo queue bot lane, more so than anything else. In terms of the two, I think right now Varus and Lucian are the two strongest AD carries. Lucian's recent buff a couple patches ago made him really good. Like, if you can hit his culling, it's such a high damage output that you've got now. And I think his level 5 spec is obnoxious. I think Varus is just a really annoying AD carry to play against, and I think Varus in general is super strong. Vayne is really good. With or without Lulu, by the way, Vayne is just a strong AD carry right now. I think under the radar because she's hard to play, but I think like Vayne is a very strong AD carry who spikes really well off just like 1 or 2 items. Like, Vayne's 2-item spike is actually really solid. So I really rate Vayne. Kai'Sa's recent buff, I think, was awesome. I think it's put Kai'Sa in a really strong spot again. Ezreal, really weak laning phase, honestly, but again, still has that like almost untouchable late game, in the sense that he's one of the few AD carries that can self-peel and basically, you know, solo win team fights through positioning and just landing skill shots. Caitlyn is just very lane dominant, still has good item build, synergizes really nicely with Morgana and Nami, who are, you know, some solid supports in the meta. Nami especially. Like, Caitlyn Nami is a really, really, really annoying lane to play against. And then once I get to the support tier list, I'll tell you why. But, you know, Nami is, in my opinion, the best support in the game right now, and therefore Caitlyn is one of the best AD carries to synergize with her. Corki's solid AP source in the bot lane that isn't, you know, Ziggs. I think, you know, having an AD carry, a traditional AD carry that has a really high magic damage output is really nice. The one thing you do need to remember is that, you know, plated steel caps is still good versus Corki, because it, you know, his damage comes through basic attacks, and plated steel caps reduces any damage from basic attacks. Misfortune, Jinx. Jinx is like, she's in solo queue, especially below like master tier level. Jinx is like here with Lulu, like, but without Lulu, she's not good, and she's not, well, not she's not good. She's just not that good. There are other supports that Jinx works well with. Nami is okay. Janna's okay. Braum is pretty decent as well. But I'd say, like, Jinx Lulu is absolutely, like, one of the biggest pub stomping, like, bot lanes that you can play in the game. I actually ban Lulu and ban Lee Sin pretty frequently, just because I don't like playing against Lulu in the bot lane. Zaya's nerf hit her quite hard. I think she's a decent pick. What I would say about Zaya is she's kind of fallen into the niche that I think Zaya should always have fit, rather than just being a strong all-round AD carry. I think Zaya should be the pick that you go for when they've got like Malphite, Camille, all this kind of stuff. Like, if you want an AD carry that has a panic button when you're getting dove, Zaya should be that AD carry, in my opinion, right? And so I think that she should not, I don't think Zaya should be a pick that you should just slap down and say, play her in any matchup with any support duo. I think she's a pick that where you should be like, I really value the ultimate that Xayah brings to the table here because of the enemy team comp having so much dive and lots of assassins. Like, Xayah is your anti-assassin AD carry just because she has that ultimate. Draven, he's good. Like, again, Draven's very user-specific. I would say that Draven is the hardest AD carry to play on this entire tier list. Mostly because he's got such a unique way of positioning in team fights, and you need to kind of dominate laning phase in order to make Draven work. I think if Draven doesn't get a kill within the first 6 minutes, he's not as good as most of the other AD carries on this list. But if he gets a kill, he's no, almost unstoppable. The nerfs to Senna really did hurt fasting and AD carry Senna. The range nerf specifically is massive for AD carry and fasting Senna. And so therefore it's brought her power level down a bit. Ziggs is actually a pretty solid bot laner. He's not troll whatsoever. If you want to play Ziggs, very, very reasonable. He's got great wave clear. And obviously provides a great AP damage source in the late game. Tristana, as much as everyone likes to tell me Tristana's good, she's barely playable. I don't know what it would take. It's a rune thing for me with Tristana. You really want lethal tempo because the point with Tristana on PC is you use your explosive shot and your lethal tempo procs and you stack that super quickly. You don't have that luxury in Wild Rift because she doesn't. I don't think she has the right rune setups to have what she wants. Ashe, barely playable in my opinion. She's really good in competitive. Like, Ashe in competitive is probably up here, especially if you're playing in North America. But I just think in solo queue, if your team can't coordinate around your Ashe arrows, there is no point picking Ashe compared to any of the other AD carries here because she's got no self-peel. Her team fight control is lackluster with all the heavy engage that's in the meta right now. And unless you can play around those engages that Ashe provides for your team, there's no point in picking her. Jhin, I don't know what it is about Jhin. The thing is, like, is it a build thing? Because lethality Jhin should be good with Edge of Night. Stormrazor is a nice item for Jhin, and I feel like Jhin should be better, but he just doesn't feel very good right now. Maybe he's too slow. Maybe the meta doesn't favor his curtain call style ultimates to control the field. I don't know. But yeah, Akshan's nerf, I think, hit him pretty hard. I'd say he's still pretty solid in solo lanes, but obviously if you're not getting the full use of his swing, and you can't really usually get the full use of his swing in the dragon lane because it's 2v2, he feels a little troll to pick in big. And of course, just for good measure, Teemo in D tier. There are picks that I've omitted, like Yasuo, mainly because like the picks like Yasuo are like very niche, and I would not recommend that you randomly pick a Yasuo in the AD carry role unless you're pre-planning it with a support. Here is my support tier list. Nami is, in my opinion, alongside Lulu, two of the best supports in the entire game. However, I think Thresh is in a really good spot right now, and I think Thresh is a very, very high tier support as well. I've moved him up slightly. But Nami, I pick Nami all the time because Nami is super broken in my opinion. I think Nami is really, really good. Staff of Flowing Water first item. Her ultimate is on a really low cooldown. I think her ultimate is on a too low cooldown, if I'm honest with you. And I think people forgot how good Summon Airy Nami actually is. People played Font of Life Nami because they were like, the value of the wave with Font of Life is awesome. And then they just forgot how good Summon Airy Nami actually is. And it is really good. Braum, amazing. Still really, really solid support. Janna, I like Rakan for the engage potential. I think he has one of the strongest team fights in the game. Morgana, I think she's much better in this role than any other role. Her Black Shield is invaluable in some team comps, mainly versus things like, you know, Morgana's Black Shield's great versus Camille's, the Malphites, etc. Anything that you want to just protect your AD carry versus. Leona, I've moved her because I think Leona is actually really strong and very underrated. Senna, I'm going to move. I don't really order them left to right usually, but just to make a point, I do think Senna is considerably weaker than she was. I don't think she's as weak as this crop of supports right here, but she is considerably weaker than she was. Galio and Alistair, I really did want to move Alistair up because I've been seeing a lot more Alistair recently, but I think he's very easily abusable by a lot of the kind of like the ranged enchanter supports in the laning phase. I've almost never lost a lane as a Nami to an Alistair. There is a... Sorry, itchy ear. There is a thought that Amumu could be higher here. I haven't tested him enough though, but the double bandage toss on a shorter cooldown. I've played Amumu support a little bit with Aftershock, and it feels okay. I played Soraka yesterday, and she felt turbo useless, man. Honestly, I think the problem is you need a support in the meta right now where you can be proactively CCing. I think supports without crowd control in some way, shape, or form kind of suck. And Soraka does not have any crowd control. And apart from her Eclipse, which is obviously like you then just stand in it for ages. Obviously the silence is nice, but they need to stand in it for ages to get rooted. And I just don't think she's proactive enough, and her heals aren't beefy enough to kind of sustain through some of the burst damage. So yeah, I think Soraka's doesn't feel very good. But otherwise, that's the tier list, guys. Let me know what you think. It's a long one, so I'm going to wrap this up now. But let me know what you think, and I'll see you soon.